We all love it, don't we? It's one of those must-have things for humans, right along with air and water. But in the South, food is more than just a necessity. From its beginning as an agricultural-based economy, life in the South has revolved around food and its traditions. Growing it, harvesting it, preserving it, preparing it, consuming it. Our obsession with food is as much a part of our culture as the Southern drawl is. Here, food isn't just fuel for the body, it's fuel for the soul. Southerners take a lot of pride in cooking. Being known as the best biscuit maker in the family is just as impressive an accomplishment as finishing medical school. Recipes for these dishes can be heavily guarded secrets, sometimes only shared upon the passing of the chef. But it's the sharing that is essential, because the key to survival of any tradition is that it gets passed on to the next generation. Teaching the younger generations how to cook soul food favorites is what brings us to Tift County High School. Students decided to use what they learned from their food science class to experiment with some of the greatest Southern staples. So into the test kitchen they went to find the best biscuits and gravy, macaroni and cheese, chicken and waffles, and banana pudding.
Because in the South, when somebody dies, what do? We take them food, right? So it's very important to us, the food angle. And I think for most Southern families, the food is extremely important. And there was one thing that stood out to me. Well, there were several things. My grandmother, on my dad's side, my grandmother would cook that were unique, and they were hers, in my mind anyway. And one of those things she always cooked every day, and that was buttermilk biscuits. And she never had a recipe. In fact, one time I asked her if she would give me the recipe, and she was like, I don't have a recipe. You're just going to have to watch me. And so I did.
The first group of students decided to take on the buttermilk biscuit, but with the help of a recipe. Their first attempt at this Southern delicacy involved combining self-rising flour, baking powder, butter, salt, buttermilk, and a touch of honey. Next, the dough got worked, rolled, and shaped. In the South, you're taught not to waste, so the scraps of dough were reused to get more biscuits made, as you can never have too many biscuits. They were placed on a sheet pan and cooked in a hot oven until they were fluffy and the tops were golden brown. While the biscuits were rising to glory, the students embraced the long-held Southern belief that gravy makes everything better. A pound of ground sausage was browned, sprinkled with flour, showered with milk, and stirred with care on a medium-high heat. The cooking process lasts until that great rich texture finally comes together. When the biscuits are out of the oven and the sausage gravy is ready, they're combined to make an ultimate breakfast cuisine. As good as it was, the students decided to make a few adjustments for their next attempt. This time, the oven's a little hotter and Southern flour is used in the dough. How fitting. The difference between Southern flour and traditional flours comes down to when the wheat was grown. Winter wheat has less gluten than wheat grown in the summer. Most all-purpose and self-rising flours have more gluten in them than Southern flour does. Now you need some gluten to hold the dough together and give it some structure, but too much gluten and you've got a biscuit that's better suited as a paperweight. The trick is to work the dough just enough to have a flaky, tender biscuit that doesn't fall apart when you take that first bite. They mixed, they rolled, they baked. Next, the students discovered a key to soul food. Sometimes, even with the exact same ingredients, even when using a well-seasoned cast iron skillet, sometimes the hands that prepare the food are what makes all the difference.
But I can see her fingers, even as she was older, she had osteoarthritis. And when she would make biscuits, her hands and her joints, were swollen from where the arthritis had progressed. But there was just something special about the way she did it, and she had done it so many years that she had a rhythm to the way that she turned it and the way that she would mix it by hand. No, she didn't have a recipe. I wish she had. It probably still wouldn't taste the same.
Next up was macaroni and cheese. Just the sight of a bowl of that bubbly, cheesy goodness is enough to make you drool. The taste and feeling of macaroni touching your tongue takes you right back to childhood, back to when this pasta and cheese concoction was the ultimate in fine dining. These students knew that feeling very well, so they knew that this was one dish they could not, should not, and would not be messed up. Feeling the pressure when it comes to cooking in the South wasn't limited to just the students. Adults at the school understood all too well the intimidation factor.
So I used to come home from school before my mom got home, and I was in charge of after-school snacks. And so finally, it used to be crackers and cheese and little things that didn't have to be cooked. But then my mom was finally at the point where she would trust me to cook. So I was going to make my favorite blue box mac and cheese. I'm pretty sure it was the spiral kind because I either eat that or the one that's a shape. Those are my two favorite, even as an adult. And so I went through the whole process. My noodles were cooked. Everything was ready except I didn't have milk. But I had peach ice cream. So I thought, okay, ice cream is made of milk, so this is going to work. I just don't want the peaches in it because obviously that's be disgusting. So I got my ice cream. I picked my peaches out. I did my little measurement, poured my little melted ice cream in. I thought I was brilliant. Had just created, the best workaround ever. Took my first bite and it was so horrible. Like I don't even think I finished. Like I think I maybe took one bite and then that was it. So ever since then, been kind of traumatized with making my own mac and cheese. I stick to the blue box.
The blue box wasn't an option for the students, so they set out and began with boiled pasta and then added simple spices such as salt, pepper, and mustard for just a touch of tanginess. Next, they stirred in basic wet ingredients such as milk, eggs, and hot sauce, allowing the cheese to melt and mix with the pasta. It was only a few minutes before the warm, homey mac and cheese was ready. While this classic offers comfort to the stomach and heart of many Southerners, the students wanted to see if it couldn't get even better. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what could you possibly add to improve a classic like this? More spices? Maybe. More cheese? Always a good answer, but that's not quite it either. The answer, my friends, is bacon. Finding a Southerner who doesn't like bacon is sort of like a snowstorm hitting the deep South. It's extremely rare and completely shocking. I mean, bacon's good with everything. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. Anyway, back to the task at hand. Students also added garlic powder and paprika with the crumbled bacon. Then they layered the pasta, cheese, and bacon when assembling the dish before baking the double stacker. It was a macaroni lasagna at this point. After it cooled, everyone dove into the timeless favorite.
It is my very favorite snack, dinner, breakfast, lunch, side dish. It's my favorite because you can hold it in a bowl and it's warm and it's gooey and it's cheesy and it's delicious. It's just comforting. It's good comfort food. The weirdest part though is, I'm not from the South. I know I sound like I'm from the South, but I'm not. My family is all from Northern Virginia, Maryland, and my grandparents are like Italian through and through. I mean, my great-grandparents were the first generation to even live in America. So for me, mac and cheese, it was honestly just something that we ate all the time. My grandparents made it all the time. It wasn't the traditional Southern with the eggs and all of that in it, but I've been eating it since I could walk. Different version, obviously, but I don't know. It's not just the taste of the mac and cheese. It's the family background. I can't think of the word I'm trying to say. It's kind of the sentiment that goes along with the making and eating of macaroni and cheese, because it's always something that we made together, ate together. It was just one of those things that we kind of did as a family. Brought us around the table.
Sometimes when we gather around a table, we all want different things. I'm dying for breakfast. Somebody wants supper. Somebody else just wants a snack. Now, how do you make everyone happy? What dish can satisfy each craving? Well, chicken and waffles, of course. Sweet and savory together on one plate. The first step with waffles is to mix up a batter of flour, baking powder, sugar, salt, butter, eggs, and milk. When the waffle iron is good and hot, the batter is poured on. All that's needed now is patience, then voila! Peeling the waffle off of the grill releases steam and sweet aromas. The next step makes it even more delicious. Syrup. Lots of syrup. A little extra butter won't hurt either. Next up was the fried chicken. When that group of students said they wanted to try tweaking fried chicken, a hush fell over the room. The rest of the class, including the teachers, were both intrigued and horrified. How do you improve on good Southern fried chicken? And what about the hot oil necessary to achieve that perfect golden brown crunchy skin on the bird? Surely there's a rule against putting boiling oil and teenagers together, right? The students had an idea to address both concerns. The air fryer. If you could still get that crunch, the chicken would be healthier and wouldn't cause third-degree burns. The students were given the green light and headed off to prepare their modern fried chicken. We've seen food bring people together, but we discovered chicken seems to work a little extra magic.
I didn't really think about it until we were married, but I noticed that my wife also liked the dark meat of the chicken, the legs, the thighs, and what have you. And so every time we'd get chicken, a box of chicken, there'd be a couple of legs and maybe a thigh. And she would always get those, and I'm thinking, man, I'd like to have that too. But that's okay, and so what I started doing is I started taking the white meat, because she didn't eat the white meat, and that was always the meat that was left. And so I kind of acted like and pretended like I like the white meat better. So I still like the dark meat, but I have to wait. I will always wait and make sure that they've got all they wanted. Then I'll eat a leg or a wing or a thigh or something like that. When you're almost married 25 years, you got to make these concessions and stuff. I was at a church retreat one time, and we had a band there that I was very enthralled with anyway. I love the band, so I'm eating with the band and I'm thinking, this is like amazing, And so I'm sitting there, and the drummer asked me that he had just gotten married. He says, what is the key to a long marriage? And I said, well, I'll be honest with you, obviously love. You gotta love who you're with. I said, it's communication. You gotta communicate. If something bothers you, you need to communicate that. Now, little things you can let go. But if something bothers you, you need to let someone know that this bothers me. Can we somehow come to an agreement on how we're going to handle this thing? So open communication, I think, is a huge key in a successful marriage and good fried chicken.
Back in the kitchen, the students prepared a batter and coating to make sure the chicken would still have the perfect crunch on the outside and tenderness on the inside. After cleaning the pieces, they were marinated in buttermilk and spices. Flour, cornstarch, and seasonings were whisked together, and then a small amount of buttermilk mixture was added to make a paste. The chicken was coated and then placed in the air fryer. A touch of oil to the coating ensured it would finish with nice color. After a half hour, to everyone's surprise, the chicken emerged, beautiful and tasty. The students made sure they'd saved a little room for dessert. On the menu, banana pudding, a dish that everyone thinks their version is the best. What we can agree on is that store-bought will do if you're in a bind, but nothing compares to homemade. Egg yolks are put in a saucepan, whisked together with sugar, flour, salt, and milk, and then stirred until it's thick. Then comes the vanilla. As they prepare to assemble the layers of deliciousness, the oven is preheated to 425 degrees. Let the layering begin. After a blanket of pudding is put down, the banana slices and vanilla wafers are added. The process is repeated, finishing with pudding as the topping. Next comes the tricky part, the meringue. The students then spoon the meringue over the pudding using the spatula to make pretty little swirls. Into the oven it goes. As good as the pudding was, everyone agrees, when it comes to cooking, sometimes the preparation can be just as sweet as the finished product.
When she would bake, she would play the Judds. And I can remember how the sun would come through the window, and I can remember everything about that kitchen when she would make banana pudding. And a lot of people just line the vanilla wafers up on top, but she would make this crazy meringue, and it looked kind of like ocean waves, and she would kind of scorch the top of it in the oven, and so it was brown little waves on the banana pudding, and I always just thought it was so pretty, and I wanted to make it like her.
During their next attempt, the students use more dairy, adding sour cream and condensed milk to the pudding. They're not just making food this time, they're making art in this kitchen. Vanilla wafers get crumbled over the top, creating this masterpiece of a treat. The hardest part comes next, waiting.
Everybody always wanted her banana pudding, but I always waited. Everybody would run up as soon as she was done to get a piece, and I always waited until like a day later when it had sat in the refrigerator for a while. That was when it was really good.
And it was good. So good. Through the whole process, the students learned some cooking techniques that worked, some that didn't. But what everyone learned is that food in the South is special, and that's due to one not-so-secret ingredient.
You know, and I want to say it's very cliche to talk about it in terms of putting the love in it when you cook. But, you know, a lot of older heads, like my grandmother and all, they don't have a per se recipe to follow. Just put a little bit of this, a little bit of this until it tastes right. Mom, what do you mean till it tastes right? But I think they cook with love, and they do cook to a point where it's they want you to be happy when you eat it. It's like it goes from the stomach to your soul. You know what I mean? That's the good stuff.